I watched as Charlotte walked into the cafe, her familiar figure standing out in the crowd. It had been months since I last saw her, but the instant she entered, everything in me stilled. My heart, the one that had been numb for so long, started beating a little too fast. She was wearing that same smile, the one that always made my stomach do flips when we were younger. I hadn't expected her to reach out. I hadn't expected her to come back into my life like this. We had talked well. I had talked about being distant for a while, and she'd agreed. But now, standing in front of me, I wasn't sure whether to be relieved or angry. "James," she greeted, her voice like a song I'd been trying to forget. It's been a while. I forced a smile, trying not to show the pain that twisted inside me. "Yeah, it has." I nodded, motioning for her to sit. The table felt smaller now, the distance between us too wide. She sat down, her eyes flicking around the room before meeting mine. Her lips parted, and for a second, I wondered if she was going to apologize for the silence. But the words that came out of her mouth weren't what I had hoped for. "Daniel and I are back together," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The world tilted. My breath caught in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't process what she had just said. I'd hoped for months that there was still a chance, some slim hope, that we could be more than friends. But hearing those words from her lips felt like a slap to my soul. I forced a smile, the fake kind that I knew all too well. "Right? That's good," I said, my voice hollow. Charlotte looked at me for a long moment, like she was waiting for something. Maybe she was waiting for me to be angry, or to beg her to stay. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. "I'm happy for you," I added, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. She blinked, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or hesitation. But she didn't say anything more. She just looked at me like I was a stranger, and in that moment, I knew I had become one to her. I leaned back in my chair, trying to suppress the storm of emotions that threatened to consume me. "I guess that makes us just friends then," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Her face tightened. "What? You heard me?" I leaned forward, my voice suddenly colder than I intended. "Just friends, Charlotte, that's all we are now." "I'm fine with it." I wasn't fine. I wasn't fine at all. My heart was breaking in ways I couldn't describe, but I couldn't let her see it. I couldn't let her see how much it hurt to know she'd chosen him again, leaving me behind like I never mattered. She opened her mouth, then closed it, as if trying to find the right words. But nothing she could say would change what had happened. I had buried my feelings for her for years, kept them hidden deep inside, and now it was too late. "I didn't want to hurt you, James," she whispered, her voice cracking. But it was too little too late. "I'm not hurt," I lied, looking down at my hands. My fingers were trembling, and I had to fight to keep the tears at bay. "James," she started, but I interrupted her before she could finish. I said, "I'm fine. Just ... Leave it, Charlotte. It's over." The words felt like poison on my tongue, but I had to say them. I had to cut her out of my life completely, or I'd never move on. She stared at me for a moment longer, then stood up, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "I should go." I nodded, still not looking at her. "Yeah, you should." She hesitated for a second, then turned and walked away. I could feel her leaving like a physical blow. The space she once filled now, an emptiness that threatened to swallow me whole. I sat there for a long time, the silence pressing down on me. The hurt, the anger, the regret, all of it swirled together in a storm I couldn't escape. But I knew one thing for sure. I had just lost the one person I thought I'd never have to let go of, and it was my fault. But as the door closed behind her, I made a promise to myself. I would survive this. I would heal. I would move on. I didn't know how yet, but I would. I didn't know how to breathe without her. It was stupid, really, how much of myself I'd given to someone who would never feel the same. But now, sitting in my empty apartment with nothing but my thoughts, I realized how deep I'd sunk into this mess. I hadn't been out of the house for days. Livy had called, texted, and even showed up at my door a couple of times, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every time I saw her name on my phone, a wave of guilt hit me, and I just couldn't face it. Instead, I stayed in bed. My phone sat on the nightstand charging, and I stared at the ceiling as if it would somehow give me the answers I needed. I kept thinking about Charlotte's words, just friends. A part of me knew I should have expected it, but another part of me had held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could make something work. I wasn't good enough, though. Not for her. When Olivia finally showed up at my door, I was too tired to argue. "James, you've got to stop doing this to yourself," she said, pushing the door open when I didn't respond to her knock. She was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, her eyes narrowed in that way that told me she wasn't backing down. "I'm fine," I muttered, sitting up in bed and running a hand through my hair. "No, you're not," she shot back, walking in and sitting on the edge of the bed. "Look at you. You haven't left this place in days. You haven't eaten properly either. You're not fooling anyone." I turned my face to the wall, not wanting to meet her eyes. "I don't want to talk about it." Olivia sighed, her voice softening. "You've got to talk about it at some point, James. You can't keep hiding away from this. I'm your best friend. You know you can talk to me, right?" Shook my head. "What's the point?" "She's gone back to him, Olivia. She's never going to choose me. You don't know that for sure." I could hear the hope in her voice, but I didn't have any left. "I do. She's with Daniel. She always will be. I'm just some guy in the background." "You're not just some guy," Olivia said, her voice firm. "You've got to see that. You're a great person, James, and you deserve someone who can love you like you love her. But you won't find that if you keep shutting everyone out." "I don't want anyone else," I replied, my voice cracking. Olivia was quiet for a moment, and I could feel her eyes on me. "I'm not saying you need to move on right now, but you have to stop punishing yourself. You've done nothing wrong." I let out a bitter laugh. "You don't get it. It's not about what I did wrong. It's about what I never did, what I never was." Olivia shook her head. "You're so hard on yourself, James. But you can't blame yourself for her choices. I can't help it." She reached out and touched my arm gently. "You're not the problem, James, and you're not going to heal if you keep thinking you are." But I didn't want to hear it. Okay, I couldn't. I had to face the reality that Charlotte had chosen Daniel again. She had made her choice, and I was left with the mess of feelings I couldn't untangle. I wasn't good enough, and maybe I never would be. When Olivia left, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was right, that I had to move on. But how? How could I move on from someone I had been in love with for as long as I could remember? Days passed, I kept to myself, buried in my thoughts. And then, unexpectedly, I saw Charlotte again. I wasn't ready. She stood outside my apartment door, her hands wringing together, her eyes searching mine with something that looked like guilt. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. I didn't say anything at first, just stared at her. The girl who had always been my best friend? The girl I had loved in silence for years. She stepped closer, her voice quieter now. "James, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. I never wanted to hurt you." I felt a flicker of something, but it wasn't hope. It was anger. "You didn't want to hurt me? You didn't want to hurt me?" I shook my head, frustrated, pushing past her. "Charlotte, you've hurt me more than anyone ever could. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect everything to be okay. You've made your choice. I'm not going to be your safety net anymore." I could see the shock in her eyes, and for a second, I felt like the world had stopped. But I couldn't let myself care. "Please," she whispered, stepping closer. "I don't know what's wrong with me." "I know." I cut her off. "You don't get to do this. Not anymore." She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. "I'm done," I said, my voice firm. "I've been done for a long time." With that, I walked away. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the reflection that looked nothing like the person I thought I was. My eyes were still swollen from the nights I'd spent crying over Charlotte, the girl who had once been my everything. But now, looking at myself, I didn't recognize the man I'd become. I was weak. I was defeated. I hated it. I couldn't keep going like this. Couldn't keep waiting for someone who had already made her choice. Charlotte was going to physically and emotionally, and no amount of hope or longing was going to bring her back. It hit me then like a punch to the gut. I needed to stop. I had to stop holding on to a past that was never meant to be. I grabbed my gym clothes from the corner of the room. I hadn't worked out in months, maybe even longer. But today, I was going to start. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. Not for Charlotte, not for Olivia, but for me. I was done being the guy who sat around and let life happen to him. I needed to be better. It wasn't easy at first. The first few days at the gym were brutal. my body screaming for rest. My mind filled with thoughts of Charlotte, the way she had looked at me when she chose Daniel. But I kept pushing. The weights didn't care about my pain. The treadmill didn't care about my broken heart. They were constant, and in their consistency, I found a kind of peace. It felt good to feel my body getting stronger. I began to take pride in my appearance, the way my muscles started to grow, the way my breath came easier. But the real victory wasn't in the physical changes, it was in the mental shift. I wasn't the man I had been. I wasn't the boy who had begged for Charlotte's attention. I wasn't the one who would wait forever. A week into my new routine, Olivia finally caught me at the gym. She had tried to talk to me for days, but I'd avoided her, too caught up in my own world. She wasn't angry. If anything, she seemed relieved to see me taking care of myself. "Look at you," she said, leaning against the gym door, arms crossed. "I didn't think you had it in you." I wiped the sweat off my face, a smile tugging at my lips. "Yeah, well, I'm tired of being pathetic," she grinned. "That's the James I know." I leaned against the wall, catching my breath. "It's not just the gym, Liv. I'm looking for a new job. I'm done with the old me, the guy who just sat around feeling sorry for himself." Olivia nodded, her expression soft. "I'm proud of you, James. I really am." I met her eyes, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in a while. "I've got a lot to fix, but I'll get there. I'm not going to let her define me anymore." The more I worked on myself, the more I noticed changes in the way people treated me. I wasn't the same guy anymore. I wasn't invisible. I was strong. I had a presence, and I liked it. But something else was happening too. Charlotte had been watching from the sidelines. She wasn't as distant as I'd hoped. In fact, the more I transformed, the more she seemed to get under my skin. One day a text from her came through. "Charlotte, hey James, can we talk?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could feel the pull of her, the same way I'd always felt it. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I typed back, "James, what is it, Charlotte?" "Charlotte, I just... I need to understand. Why are you suddenly so different?" I almost laughed at her question. Was she really asking me this? Did she think I'd been waiting around for her? "James, because I'm done waiting for someone who doesn't want me. I'm finally doing something for me." There was no reply for a long while. And when the message finally came, it wasn't from her. It was Daniel. "Daniel, you think you can just walk away, don't you?" The message was cold, full of the venom I had expected from him. He'd never been a fan of me, and now, with Charlotte no longer in my orbit, I could see why. "James, what's your problem, Daniel?" "Daniel, you think you can just take her back by getting fit? You're not a priority, James. Never have been, never will be." I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. I wasn't going to rise to his bait, but his words stung. I couldn't let him win, though. I couldn't let anyone control my emotions anymore. I closed my phone and took a deep breath. The next day, Charlotte showed up at my apartment. I hadn't expected it, but when she knocked, I found myself frozen in place. I hadn't seen her in days, and now she was standing in front of me like she always had, looking unsure, guilty even. "James," she began, her voice soft. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms. "About what? About how I'm suddenly different? Or about how you're with Daniel?" She flinched, and I saw the flicker of regret in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. I shook my head. "I already did." She took a step closer, her hand reaching out. I made a mistake, James. I never meant for you to feel this way." I backed away, shaking my head. "No, Charlotte. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. And it wasn't me." Her face fell, and I could see her world crumbling. But it wasn't mine to fix anymore. "Goodbye, Charlotte," I said, and closed the door before she could say another word. I had made my choice. And for the first time in a long while, I was starting to believe it was the right one. I was different now. It wasn't just the way I looked, though the gym had definitely helped with that. It was everything: my posture, the way I carried myself, the way I spoke. I wasn't the same guy who had been left in the dust by Charlotte. I wasn't weak anymore. I wasn't waiting. Sophie was the first person to notice. I had started working at a new marketing firm a few weeks ago, just a small step toward the future I had been too scared to chase. Sophie worked in the same department, and from the moment she introduced herself, I could tell she was different from anyone I'd met before. "Hey, James, she said one afternoon, sliding into the seat across from me at lunch. "You've been looking? It's really good lately. What's your secret?" I almost laughed. Felt odd hearing someone compliment me like that. But Sophie was genuine, and there was no hiding the slight flirtation in her tone. "Just hitting the gym," I replied, trying to keep my voice casual. She smirked. "Well, it's working." I felt something stir inside me, a mix of pride and something else, something I hadn't felt in a while. We talked for the rest of lunch, and I found myself enjoying the conversation. Sophie was sharp, funny, and easy to talk to. She didn't know the old me, the one who was constantly tangled up in Charlotte's mess. She just saw the new me. I hadn't even realized it, but my smile came easier now. My confidence wasn't forced. It was real. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Charlotte. A few days later, I got a message from her. "Charlotte, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just wanted to check in. How are you?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to reply, wanted to hear her voice again, even if it was just to tell me she was sorry. But another part of me, the part I'd been building over the last few weeks, didn't want to go back. I'd moved on. She had chosen Daniel. I ignored the message and went back to my work. It felt easier now, not obsessing over what she thought or how I should respond. But then the messages kept coming. "Charlotte, I miss talking to you, James. I know things were messed up, but I want to fix it." I didn't respond. I wasn't going to be the guy who fell for her again. Meanwhile, Sophie and I continued to spend more time together. We worked on projects together, and at lunch, we'd talk about everything: our pasts, our dreams, and the stuff that made us laugh. It was refreshing, and I liked the way she made me feel like I wasn't defined by my past. One evening after work, we ended up at a cafe down the street. It wasn't planned, but we both needed a break, and as the conversation flowed, I found myself sitting a little closer to her than I'd intended. "So," Sophie said, her voice a little more playful than usual, "how about we make this official?" "Make what official?" "Make what official?" She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "You and me. What do you say?" I felt a rush of excitement, mixed with a hint of disbelief. This was happening. Sophie, who was smart, beautiful, and kind-shy, was interested in me. Not the broken version of me I had been for so long, but the new, confident me. "I think I'd like that," I said, my voice steady. And just like that, things changed. Sophie was now part of my world, and I could feel a new chapter opening up for me. That evening, after I left the cafe, I couldn't help but feel like a weight had been lifted. But when I got home, I saw Charlotte's name pop up on my phone again. "Charlotte, I can't stand this anymore, James. Please, let's talk." The words twisted something in me, and for a moment, I considered picking up the phone. But then I thought about Sophie, about the way I felt when we were together, and the decision was clear. I hit ignore. The next day at work, I bumped into Charlotte. She was standing near the elevator, waiting to go up, and when she saw me, her face lit up with relief. "James." I cut her off before she could say anything else. "Charlotte, stop." Her face fell, confusion and hurt clouding her expression. "What do you mean? I mean, stop. You can't just come back into my life like nothing's changed. You had your chance, Charlotte." She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "James, I made a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared." Scared? Or just selfish? I couldn't hold back the bitterness anymore. The anger that had been building inside me for so long was finally spilling over. "You chose him, Charlotte. You left me behind, and now you want to come back because I've moved on?" She looked like she was about to cry, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything. The pain, the years I spent waiting. "I'm with someone else now," I said, my voice firm. "I'm happy. I'm not going back to who I was. Not for you, not for anyone." Turned and walked away, not looking back. As I walked down the hallway, I felt the power shift inside me. I wasn't the same guy who had been crushed by Charlotte's rejection. I wasn't the guy who let her control my emotions. I was strong now. I had taken my life back. No matter how much Charlotte tried to claw her way back in, I wasn't going to let her. I'd moved on. I'd found something better. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I never imagined it would feel this way. Watching Charlotte from a distance, I felt like I was looking at someone I didn't recognize anymore. She wasn't the girl I'd grown up with, the one who'd shared my every secret, the one I thought I would always be there for. Now she looked lost, fragile in a way I'd never seen before. But it wasn't my problem anymore. I hadn't heard from her in days. After that last confrontation in the hallway, I thought it was over. I thought she'd accept that we were done, that I was done. But Charlotte wasn't one to give up so easily. She kept reaching out, always through messages, but I didn't respond, not a single time. Then came a call from Olivia. "James," she said, her voice tight, "have you heard from Charlotte?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah, she's been sending me messages. But I'm not responding. I'm done. Liv." She made her choice. Olivia was quiet for a moment, then spoke softly. "You know, she's not the same person anymore. It's hard to watch. You're doing the right thing, though. You've got to keep moving forward. Don't let her pull you back in." I glanced at the phone, watching the notifications pop up. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I swiped them away without opening any of them. "Yeah, I know," I replied, trying to sound confident. "You're doing better," Olivia continued. "Sophie's good for you. I can see that." I smiled at the mention of Sophie. Things between us were still new, but they felt right. She was kind, easy to talk to, and best of all, she wasn't someone from my past. She didn't carry the weight of the mistakes I had made with Charlotte. Sophie and I had spent more time together, and I could feel the connection between us growing stronger. We went out to dinner once or twice, just talking and laughing, nothing heavy, nothing like what I had with Charlotte. But it was enough to make me feel like I was starting to rebuild. One evening, after work, I was at the local coffee shop, enjoying my usual after-hours pick-me-up, when Sophie walked in. I waved her over and she smiled, her face lighting up as she slid into the seat across from me. "You look good today," I said, feeling a rush of warmth in my chest. She grinned, her eyes twinkling. "Well, thank you. It's not easy keeping up with you, Mr. Gym Guy." We both laughed, and for a moment it felt like I could forget everything, forget Charlotte, forget the mess of my past, and just focus on this simple, easy connection. Sophie leaned forward slightly, her voice quieter. "So, how's everything going?" With ... her. I hesitated, but only for a second. "It's complicated. But it's better now." "Good," Sophie said, nodding. "You deserve better than her." I smiled. I know. I didn't realize how true that had become. Charlotte's isolation had become more and more apparent to me, even without me needing to see her every day. Olivia had mentioned that Charlotte was distant at work, and I heard through the grapevine that Daniel had become more controlling. He hadn't been kind to her for a while, and his possessive nature was starting to show. I wasn't surprised. I had always known Daniel for what he was: manipulative, self-serving, and willing to tear others down to get what he wanted. But Charlotte, she never saw it. Until now. One night, I received a text from Olivia. "Olivia, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think Charlotte might be in trouble. Daniel's really been pushing her lately. He's controlling." I stared at the message, my heart clenching. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. I knew what it felt like to be trapped, to feel helpless. But then I remembered everything she had done, how she had chosen him over me, and I felt the anger rise again. I put my phone down, not sure what to feel. Sophie noticed the change in me. She could tell something was bothering me, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. I didn't want to drag her into my old mess, but that night, Sophie was different. She didn't push me, didn't ask more questions. She just sat with me, her hand resting gently on mine. "You know, if you ever need to talk, I'm here," she said softly. It felt good hearing those words from someone who actually cared. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice quieter than usual. "It's just ... It's hard to move on when everything is still so fresh." She smiled, squeezing my hand. "You're doing better than you think." I wasn't so sure about that, but her words gave me some comfort. The next morning, I saw Charlotte's name on my phone again. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to answer. "James," she said, her voice shaky. "I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I almost said no, but something in her voice made me pause. I met her at the same cafe we had sat in before. She looked different. Her usual polished look was replaced with a tired, disheveled version of herself. Her eyes were red, and her hair was messier than usual. "James," she began, her voice strained. I messed up. I see now what I lost. I should have chosen you. I didn't say anything for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell her I was sorry. Part of me wanted to hug her and say everything was going to be okay. But I had learned my lesson. "I'm not the guy you left behind, Charlotte," I finally said, my voice steady. "I've moved on. I think it's time you did too." Her face twisted in frustration. I can't. I don't know how." I stood up, meeting her gaze for the last time. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I left her there, sitting in that cafe, realizing she had lost me for good. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I didn't expect to hear from Charlotte again, not after everything that had happened. But there she was, standing in front of my door, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed, like she hadn't slept in days. She looked like she hadn't eaten either, and for a second, I felt a flicker of something close to sympathy. But it was quickly overshadowed by the anger that had been building up for months. "James," she whispered, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Can we talk?" I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "What's there to talk about, Charlotte?" "You made your choice." She shook her head, tears threatening to spill over. "I didn't know how bad things were, James. I didn't know what I was walking into with Daniel." And I could hear the tremor in her voice, and a part of me wanted to pull her inside, to hold her, to tell her everything was going to be okay. But another part, the part that had been hurt so many times before, told me to shut the door and walk away. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice cold, guarded. Charlotte took a shaky breath, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "He's been lying to me, James, about everything, money, trust, the way he's been treating me. It's not what I thought it was. I felt a tightness in my chest, but I pushed it aside. And now you want me to feel sorry for you?" Her face crumpled at the words, and I couldn't look at her anymore. I had to stop caring. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't answer. What was I supposed to say to that? Every time I let myself believe she cared, she proved me wrong. I was wrong, James. I should have never chosen him. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that. It's too late for that now, Charlotte. You made your bed. Later that night, I found myself pacing my apartment, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger, regret, and confusion. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her exactly how I felt, to make her feel the hurt she'd caused me. But I knew better. I wasn't that guy anymore. My phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen and saw a message from Sophie. "Sophie, are you okay?" I sat down on the couch, staring at the message. It was simple, but it carried so much more than just those words. Sophie had been there for me in a way no one else had, offering support without judgment, letting me heal at my own pace. She didn't rush me, didn't pressure me to open up. She just ... understood. I typed back quickly. "James, yeah, I'm fine. Just needed some time to think." "Sophie, take all the time you need. I'm here if you need to talk." I smiled a little, feeling the weight on my chest lighten just a fraction. Felt good to know there was someone who cared about me without the complicated history that Charlotte and I shared. The next morning, I saw a post on social media that made my stomach churn. This was from a mutual friend of Charlotte's and Daniel's. A photo of the two of them at some fancy restaurant. Their arms around each other, looking like nothing was wrong. And then it hit me. Charlotte was still stuck in his world. She was still trying to convince herself that everything was okay, that she hadn't made a mistake. But the truth was clear now. Daniel had been manipulating her from the start. He wasn't the guy she thought he was, and now that she'd seen the cracks, she couldn't unsee them. The days that followed were strange. I had the urge to check in on Charlotte, to see if she was okay, but I resisted. I wasn't her savior. I wasn't the one who could fix her. But I wasn't immune to her pain. I met with Olivia one afternoon, and she could see it in my eyes. "You're still thinking about her, aren't you?" she asked. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I don't know, Liv. I'm pissed at her. I'm pissed at myself for letting her get to me again." Olivia gave me a sympathetic smile. "You're not the only one who got hurt, James, but she has to face the consequences of her own choices. You can't keep carrying that weight for her." I nodded, taking a long sip of my coffee. "I know. I just wish things had turned out differently. I wish I didn't care so much. You can't change what happened. All you can do is move forward." Olivia's words felt like a lifeline. The next week, I saw Charlotte again, but this time, she was different. She wasn't standing in front of my door, asking for forgiveness. She was sitting across from me at a cafe, her eyes swollen, her hands shaking as she sipped her coffee. "I fucked up, James," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never should have left you. I see that now, but it's too late, isn't it?" I met her gaze, my heart heavy. "Yeah, it is." Her eyes filled with tears again, but I wasn't going to fall for it. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. "You made your choice, Charlotte, and now you have to live with it." She nodded, her face crumbling. "I understand. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't change anything," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not going to hate you for it. I'm just going to move on. I have to." Charlotte nodded, wiping her eyes. "I hope you find happiness, James." "I already have," I said, my gaze steady. "And I don't need you to find it for me." I stood up and walked away, leaving her behind. For the first time, I felt free. The weight of the past had been lifted. I wasn't the same person I used to be, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. I had never been good at letting go. It wasn't just Charlotte. Those was bigger than that. My entire life I had held on to every slight, every betrayal, the small ones, the big ones, each one etched into me like a permanent scar. And now, here I was, standing on the edge of something bigger than me. The decision wasn't as simple as it seemed. I had every right to be angry. Hell, I had every right to make Charlotte feel the pain she'd caused me. She'd chosen him again and I'd been left picking up the pieces. She had manipulated me, used me, and then tossed me aside like I was nothing. And yet part of me felt something else, something I hated to admit, sympathy. She'd been so sure of her decision when she walked away. But now, I could see it in her eyes every time I ran into her. She was starting to see the cracks in her perfect little world with Daniel. I ran a hand through my hair, sitting down on the edge of the bed. I stared at the phone in front of me, the message from Charlotte still glowing on the screen. She wanted to talk again. But did I really want to hear her apologies? Did I want to hear her excuses? "James, please, I need you to listen." Her words echoed in my mind, and I felt a twinge of guilt. Should I forgive her? I picked up the phone again, my finger hovering over the keys. Part of me wanted to let her have it. I could tear her down with the words I had been holding in for months. She deserved it. But another part of me, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had spent so long being angry, so long waiting for her to realize her mistake, that I had never really thought about what I needed, what I deserved. And then there was Olivia. I met Olivia for coffee that afternoon, hoping to clear my head. She could always talk sense into me, no matter how clouded my judgment got. "How's it going?" she asked, taking a sip from her cup, her eyes watching me closely. "Not great," I muttered, my gaze fixed on the table. "Charlotte, she's trying to talk to me again. She says she made a mistake. She wants to make it right." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to do?" I shrugged, frustration creeping into my voice. "I don't know. Part of me wants to tear her apart for everything she's done. But another part of me," I stopped myself, clenching my fists. "I'm tired of feeling like I'm the one who has to fix everything. Why should I care? Why should I even let her back in?" "Because you don't want to live your life with that anger. Can't keep letting her have that hold over you, James." I looked at her, disbelief creeping into my chest. "You really think I should just let her off the hook, after everything she did?" Olivia leaned in, her tone soft but firm. "I'm not saying you should forget it. You can't forget what she did. But holding on to that anger will only hurt you. If you're looking for peace, you have to let it go. Don't let her keep making you miserable." Her words hit harder than I expected. I didn't want to hear it, but I knew she was right. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're weak, James. It means you're strong enough to move on. The next day, I saw Charlotte again. I had tried to avoid her. I wasn't ready, but there she was, sitting in the same cafe where we'd met months ago. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red. She looked completely defeated. "James," she whispered as soon as she saw me, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I had until I lost it." I stood there for a moment, looking at her. It wasn't the apology I'd been waiting for. She wasn't begging. But I could see it, she was broken. "I don't know what you want from me, Charlotte." I'm still angry, but I couldn't ignore the sadness in her voice. She looked nothing like the person who had walked away from me so easily. "Please, James," she continued, her voice trembling. I need you to know I never meant to hurt you. Daniel, he's not who I thought he was. He's been controlling me, manipulating me. Never saw it before. I felt a sharp pang of sympathy, but I didn't let it show. That's your problem, Charlotte, not mine. Her face twisted in pain. I know. I've ruined everything. And I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I swallowed, my chest tight. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, how much I hated her for choosing Daniel over me. But instead, I closed my eyes, my voice steady, despite the whirlwind inside me. I don't forgive you, Charlotte. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She flinched, and for a second, I saw the old Charlotte, the one I used to love, peeking through the cracks of the woman who had walked away from me. But then, I realized something. I didn't need to carry her burden anymore. I didn't need to let her back into my life to heal. You've got to fix this yourself, I said, turning to leave. Can't help you. I didn't hear from her after that, and in a way, I felt relief. It was the right decision. I had given her what she needed. And now, I needed to focus on myself. I couldn't dwell on revenge. I didn't need to tear her down. Life had already done that for me. As I sat down that evening, I thought about everything Olivia had said. I thought about how far I'd come, how much I'd grown. It wasn't easy, but I was getting there. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Thanks for the advice, I muttered to myself, smiling a little. I guess you were right after all. I was ready to move on. And for the first time in a long time, I knew I was doing it for me. It had been months since I last saw Charlotte, but when she walked into the cafe, I knew exactly who she was. The same face, the same smile that had once made my heart race, but now it was different. She was different. Looked broken, not in the way she had when we first met, but like she had been pieced together and shattered again. Her eyes were dull, and the confidence she once had was gone. James, she said, her voice trembling. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I had to come. I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at her, trying to keep my composure. The rage I had buried deep inside me was starting to surface, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't the time. I was wrong, she continued, her hands shaking. I should never have left you. I should never have gone back to Daniel. I leaned back in my chair, my arms crossed. You're right about that. Should have never gone back to him. She sat down across from me, her eyes pleading. James, I know I hurt you. I can never take that back, but I need you to understand something. Daniel has been using me. He's not who I thought he was. I could feel the anger bubbling up, but I pushed it down again. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't even about Daniel. This was about me. I had to remind myself of how far I'd come, of how much I had grown. I don't care anymore, Charlotte, I said, my voice steady. You made your choice. You picked him, not me. And I've spent enough time waiting for you to come to your senses. Her face crumpled, and I saw the tears well up in her eyes. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was selfish. I didn't see it at the time, but I know now. I've lost everything. I shook my head, not feeling the same sympathy I once would have. You don't get to say that to me. You've had your chances, you had your time, and you let it slip away. You let me slip away. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, she said, her voice small. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am.
Oh.
I wish I could change it all. What? I looked at her, the girl I once thought I couldn't live without, and felt nothing but emptiness. She wasn't the person I remembered. I wasn't the person I was when I was with her. I had changed, and I didn't need her anymore. You can't change the past, Charlotte, I said quietly. But you can stop making the same mistakes. Her shoulders slumped, and she stared at her hands, still holding on to the idea of what could have been. But I wasn't holding on anymore. I didn't realize how much time had passed until I checked my watch. I needed to leave, to move forward. I had already said everything I needed to say. But before I could get up, I heard a familiar voice. You're walking away from her again, huh? Daniel's voice was low, mocking. I froze. For a moment, I didn't even recognize the man standing in front of me. He wasn't the confident, charming guy Charlotte had fallen for. This version of Daniel was thin, his face gaunt, his eyes filled with bitterness and something darker. Stay out of this, Daniel, I said, my voice cold. This is between me and Charlotte. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You really think you've won, don't you? You think she's going to run to you now, that you've changed? She's mine, James. She always will be. I laughed, and it was a sound that surprised even me. You're delusional if you think she's still yours. Daniel's expression shifted, and I could see the mask crack. She'll come back, you'll see. I shook my head, my gaze never leaving his. You don't get it, do you? She doesn't want you anymore. You've made sure of that. You think I don't know what you've been doing to her? He hissed. You think I don't know how you've been planting doubt in her head? You're pathetic. I stepped forward, closing the gap between us. No, Daniel, you're pathetic. You're the one who's been lying to her. You're the one who's been controlling her, keeping her in this toxic little world you've built for her. He took a step back, his hands clenched into fists. I'll destroy you, James. You think she'll ever look at you the way she looked at me? I didn't flinch. She already has, Daniel. She already has. The silence that followed was thick with the weight of unspoken words. I could see the anger in his eyes, but I knew he was losing. He had already lost. And I was finally free. As Daniel stormed out, I turned to Charlotte. She didn't look at me, her face still buried in her hands, but I could see the tears that had spilled over. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I just felt sorry for her. I didn't know what she expected from me, but it wasn't the answer she was going to get. I walked over to the door, pausing for a moment. I'm done, Charlotte. This is the last time. She didn't speak, didn't move. I could have said something else, but I didn't. The silence said everything I needed it to. I walked out, finally free from her, and from the grip she had on me for so long. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift from my chest. This was my moment, my choice. I wasn't going to let anyone control me again. Not Charlotte, not Daniel. No one. I was done being broken. I was done being the guy who waited for someone to choose me. Now I was the one who chose. And for the first time in a long time, I was choosing myself. I stared out the window, watching the city below. It felt like a lifetime ago that I'd been caught in Charlotte's world, lost and unable to see anything outside of her. But now, as I watched the sun set over the skyline, I realized how much had changed. I had changed. Sophie's voice interrupted my thoughts, warm and steady as usual. You okay? I turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway, looking at me with that caring expression she always wore. Yeah, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. I think I finally am. She walked over to me, her hand brushing against mine as she sat down next to me on the couch. I'm glad. You deserve to feel at peace, James. I looked down at our hands, intertwined together. I've been holding on to so much for so long. It feels like a weight has been lifted. Sophie squeezed my hand. You've let go of so much. You're not the same person anymore. I'm not, I agreed, feeling the truth of it deep inside me. I'm stronger now. I'm finally able to see things clearly. A few days later, I got a message from Charlotte. It was one of those moments I'd been expecting where I knew she'd reach out again, trying to make things right, trying to fix what she'd broken. Charlotte. James. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I know I can't change the past, but I need you to know that I am so sorry. I made a huge mistake, and I've been paying for it. I miss you. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to pour out all the anger I had inside, tell her everything I'd kept locked away for months. But another part of me, perhaps the part I had been building over the last few months, knew better. I took a deep breath and typed back. James, it's too late, Charlotte. I've moved on. I don't need you in my life anymore. There was no immediate response. I wasn't expecting one. She'd already made her choice, and I had made mine. The next day, I bumped into Olivia on my way into the office. She smiled when she saw me, that knowing look in her eyes. How's everything going? I shrugged, not hiding the smile that tugged at my lips. Better than I thought. I think it's finally over, Live. She raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. I told you it'd be. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. I nodded. I think I've learned that the hard way. Olivia chuckled. We all do, don't we? But look at you now. You're moving forward, and that's all that matters. A few weeks passed, and life started to feel like it was finally back on track. I was getting back into the rhythm of things, focusing on my career and spending more time with Sophie. We went out for dinner, took walks in the park, and talked about everything and nothing. It was peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life. Charlotte, on the other hand, was still struggling. Saw it in her posts on social media, her pretending to be okay, plastering on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was sad, really. I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. She had never learned to face the consequences of her actions. But it wasn't my problem anymore. Sophie was my problem now, and I was okay with that. I met Charlotte one last time, purely by chance. It was at a mutual friend's gathering. She wasn't expecting to see me, and I certainly hadn't planned on being there, but there she was, standing in the corner, looking as lost as ever. When she saw me, her face tightened, but she didn't look away. She walked over to where I stood, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. James, ... I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. I can't fix it. I can't change anything. I studied her face, seeing the same vulnerability I had once been drawn to. But now, it was different. It didn't move me the way it once had. I'm sorry for everything, she said, her voice quiet. I never wanted to hurt you. I was selfish. I see now that I ruined everything. I sighed, feeling the weight of everything that had led to this moment. You did ruin it, Charlotte, but it's too late to fix it. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let myself feel bad for her. I had to stay strong. I've moved on, Charlotte. And you will too, eventually. There was a long pause before she spoke again. I don't know how to live with what I've done. You'll figure it out, I said, my voice steady. You always do. As I walked away from her, I felt lighter than I had in months. Charlotte's words had been sincere, but I couldn't let her back in. I had learned the hard way that sometimes people don't deserve second chances, no matter how much you care about them. I looked over at Sophie, standing across the room, her smile warm and inviting. She was the one I wanted. She was the one who had helped me find my way back to myself. And that was all I needed. I walked over to her, my heart full. Hey, I said, my voice calm. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Sophie's smile grew, and she reached for my hand. Me too. And just like that, I knew I had made the right choice. Charlotte's chapter in my life was over, and mine with Sophie. That was just beginning.